Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and hello, and welcome to Books from My Library. My name is Kimolisa Mings. I am a reader, writer, read. I love to read and I love to write. And as a self-published author, I have to ask myself, how are readers going to find my books? And so I got to thinking about the books that are in my library. And so this series has been created, Books from My Library. Now, the first book for this week, normally I do 3 books, 2 of which are fiction, 1 of which is non-fiction. And the first book is fiction, and it is, ooh, shiny, oh gosh, there we go, Widows by Linda LaPlante. Alright, so this book, actually, I actually thought this was my mother's book, but actually it's my sister's book. And she had done a study abroad in Leeds. And this book ended up in my bookshelf on my library because we share a library. And the other day, this book has been in that library for, I would say maybe, let's say 4-5 years before I decided to read it. And why did I read it? Well, a few years back there was a movie called Widows with Viola Davis, and it was just like, Widows? There's a book in our bookshelf called Widows. I went to see it. It wasn't bad, the movie. You know, I was there for Viola Davis. But then when I read, the other day, well, one day, I noticed that I noticed the book was there, and I decided to read the back of it, and it was like, oh, that movie was based on this book. So I read the book, and that whole experience is why I would watch the movie before I read the book, to a degree. Because in this instance, like P.S. I Love You, which is in my bookshelf, but I haven't read it, that's another story. But it was a situation whereas the movie is based in, I think, Detroit in the States, whereas this is set in England, and it's also a different time. And in terms of, the movie was based on more recent, around in the 20-teens, whereas this, I get the feeling it might be in the 80s and what may have you. And although the movie did catch some of the beats of the book, I felt the book was more compelling because the main widow, although I knew the twist with the main widow from the movie, it was still a compelling read to see how she dealt with it. Because there were just some nuances, because with the more recent movie they were speaking to social issues of the day, whereas this, it was more focused on the relationships with the main widow and her husband. And it gives you the backstories of it. And it was also a situation where her relationship with him, as well as her relationship with the women, and although she may have had some distance between them, at the end it was a story about female bonding. But it was interesting because it was like female bonding in a masculine way. That's how I would put it. And I can I can, maybe because I've read it within the last 5 years, but strangely enough, this person's storytelling, I can still visualize the different scenes. And I don't think the movie was able to capture what was in this book in terms of the tension, the suspense. And there was a scene after the main event, which was a heist, and there was just this tension because you had to be dependent on the main character had to be dependent on another character, and you just wasn't sure if that other character would be able to deliver. And it was just a damn good book. So although it's my sister's book and she got it in Leeds, it is my book because I see myself reading this again. So I would say I ended up reading this book because of the movie, but it surpassed the movie, and it's a damn good read. I think people might get stuck because of the times, but then as I may have said before, whereas like it's easier, or may have written it in on my Instagram, Kimolisa Reads, where it's like I feel safer with historical books because I know what to expect, and they don't have to deal with the technology that's still evolving with us now, so it doesn't feel dated because it's like set in time. This is this period, and this is what my expectations are for this period. But then I like that I was able to explore that time and that place. And she just wrote a really interesting book which had a lot of tension, and I was there for it. So that was Linda LaPlante's Widows. Now the next book is Sexual Healing by Jill Nelson. Now I feel like I had gotten this at Borders, so I'm thinking this may have been when I was visiting my sister in Rhode Island while she was. I didn't even know what it was, a sister book thing. Okay, you know what? She was studying in Rhode Island at Johnson and Wales, and I believe I had gotten this at the Borders there. And okay, yeah, the cover, I think it was a situation where it was like in the African American book section, and the cover kind of looked interesting enough, but then when I read the back of it, I was like, oh wow, okay, let me try that. And I must say it was an interesting premise, and the back blurb definitely got my attention. And I must say I did enjoy the book because it was just something so out there, and yet, let's just put it this way, yes, there were romantic elements, but like Widows, there was a friendship element to it, and I felt, and although it is erotica, there was this underlying friendship element that I found that I enjoyed with this book. Is that Missy Elliott? Oh, there's only one Missy Elliott. There's a blurb here. It's like Chocolate Sex in the City by Missy Elliott. How you like them apples? So yeah, I enjoyed this. But the funny thing is, now I was reading, I think it was either, I have a strong feeling it was Essence. I feel it was Essence because I think it was after Honey had closed down. The Honey magazine had closed down. But I had seen another book by this author, and unfortunately, and I think it was a continuation of this storyline, and it just wasn't as good. No, it wasn't. And it just shows that, some books, yes, they hit the mark, and some books you follow up with the author, and you can see me sweating. You can follow up with the author, and it's just, they don't deliver. What I would do though is I would check out her other books to see if she has written any books since, to say, hey, if I read it or not. So strangely enough, Sexual Healing, associated with my sister once more, because I found this in a bookstore, and it was in a particular section. Oh! I'm still drinking my beer in a fruit glass. Now the last book is The Zim-Zum of Love by Rob and Kristen Bell. Now with this particular book, it was a situation where, let me see, in 2012, I had started, I had gotten my sister again, ain't it? I had gotten my sister's iPod, and I had started listening to podcasts. And through Apple's iTunes, you would be able to go to the podcasts, and at the bottom it would show podcasts like them, similar podcasts. And I feel like I may have I've discovered Rob Bell's podcast, the Robcast, via Oprah Winfrey's podcasts, which were podcasts that were based on her Sirius FM radio show. So I started listening to him, and it was just a different take on Christianity than I was aware of. And back then and into now, it would have been him, Joel Osteen, and T.D. Jakes. That would be in my spirituality / Christianity podcast list. And in listening to this podcast, I'm aware that he has books. And one day I was at Best of Books, and I decided, hey, let me check the spirituality section to see if they have any of his books. And he so happened to have, I think he had a couple books, but then I decided to go with The Zim-Zum of Love. And the subtitle, A New Way of Understanding Marriage. I'm not married, but it was one of those situations where as somebody builds their platform so well that you're willing to check out what they produce. And this is one of them, the things I did. Did I enjoy the book? Let's be frank, not really. But it's still in my bookshelf because I think I'm going to try reading it again and see if I still feel the same. And it's not so much for the marriage sake. It's more of relationship sake and understanding it, because when it comes to love, you just assume that people would just fall in and it's there, but it's a nuanced thing, and that's why I like to explore the nuance of love. So that's why I got The Zim-Zum of Love by Rob and Kristen Bell. Now with all that said, how did I discover the books in my library? Sweaty, because it's hot nowadays. We have Linda LaPlante's Widows, based on a I got it because my sister had the book and the movie had come out, and I made the connection that the two were connected. I made the connection. The two were connected. I made a connection between the two, and so I decided to read it, and I enjoyed it. And I would say I enjoyed it more than the movie, to be honest. So I feel I will be reading it again. The next book, let's just be honest, my sister is in all of this, is in a bookshelf, in a bookstore, namely Borders. I feel that in a few years people are going to be going, what is Borders? Borders was a bookstore. It was as big or maybe bigger than Barnes and Nobles. But it was a big old bookstore. And I came across this while, I think at some point when I was visiting my sister while she was studying in Rhode Island. And why did I choose it? I think it was because it was in the African American books area, because it had an interesting cover, and because the information on the back was very compelling, and so I just scooped it up. And I think for me, when it comes to bookstores, you might have gone and gone and gone, and there's sometimes a fatigue, whereas I can't find anything. So whenever I find something, I snatch it up. And the last book is The Symptom of Love. It's because I was listening to his podcast, and while in the bookstore I decided, let me check out what they have, if they have his books, and it so happened they did. And so that's it for books from my library. Thank you for making it this far. I do tend to ramble, and I apologize for that, but hey, that's who I am. So that is it. Those are the 3 books for this week, and I hope you come back out for next episode. Yay! Have a great week.